making a visual novel for beginners called So You Want to Make a Visual Novel. Good, I'm proud of you. Cool. My name is Ash Thurman. I'm the single person operator of a small digital atelier called Pixels and Mid Studios. I call it a digital atelier because I don't just do games, I also do other stuff sometimes, like audio dramas and writing and whatever, it's cool. I also do like voice acting and stuff, and I do editing for other games and blah, blah. I'm in a little bit of anime. I have 2 lines in Fire Force. It's very exciting. Yeah, it was very exciting. I got to be on Toonami for like 30 seconds. Fun times. So visual novels. So to preface, I am what we in the visual novel indie scene. I'm a solo developer, which means I do not have a team. It is me. I'm a team of me, and whoever. I might hire voice actors, and occasionally commission icons, but generally every single thing that goes into one of my games I make, I've done it. I wrote it, I arted it, I programmed it, I suffered, UI'd it, whatever. I'm actually in a couple of my own games. So why not? I voice acted and it was great. To start with making a visual novel, you have to kind of go, oh yeah, these are some of my games. I forgot the slide was in here. I got surprised by my own self. These are some of my games. That's all. Visual novel. What is a visual novel? A visual novel is it's an art form based out of Japan. It is a combination of art and comics and writing and interactive fiction and smooshing it all together to create this really cool choose your own adventure, who you gonna smooch game where you're in control of the story. I have a whole panel of the history of visual novels, so I'll give you the 30-second rundown. Japan was like, we're going to make games. United States was like, we're going to make games. They're going to be adventure games. And Japan was like, I need an edge. I'm going to put romance in my games. They did. It went really, really well. Then they were like, wow, this isn't enough to sell games. So we're going to mix it up a little bit. We get the birth of the visual novel. It comes out of, it's a combination. You'll see its roots in things like interactive movies. You'll see it in old text adventure games. You're going to see the roots in things like interactive RPGs. It's a confluence of a couple different factors. All came together. The first decided upon, this is the modern visual novel, is 96. Since then, it's developed and formed. We had a huge, awesome resurgence of the English language market and kind of an uprising in 04, 05 because of a couple really cool factors. One of them being the creation of the Ren'Py visual novel engine, which allowed a huge number of English language developers to be like, I can make a game now, cool, and they did, and they're amazing. And you should come to the state of Ren'Py later after this, because Tom will tell you all about it. It'll be so cool. And we also had really cool things happening, like the introduction of the handheld systems, which it was like, okay, now we have the PSP, so now we're going to give you Corpse Party. Or, that was legit. And, okay, now we have the DS, and so now Americans can play Ace Attorney, and it's like, oh, Americans kind of like these. I guess we can bring more over. Cool. And it's just been a slow progression of more and more coming over, getting localized, the growth of the EVN market, blah, blah, blah. I'll stop there because that will go on so long. Parts of a visual novel, and this is really, really important. We talk about the parts of a visual novel because there are a few kind of emblematic things that make a visual novel, as opposed to a text adventure game or the Zork style, go north. Things that make it different than IF, like twine-based interactive fiction, things that make it different than any other genre. We have the writing. It's a visual novel. Novel is in the word. It's right there. It's a book. You're reading a book that you can choose, that you get to choose because of branching path structure. You got cool things like backgrounds. They're like the set piece of the play that is your visual novel. You got cool things like sprites that are the actor in the play that is your visual novel. You got cool things like text boxes. Text boxes are cool because that's how you tell people this is the story. This is how your text delivery system. It's your gameplay mechanic in the game of a visual novel. So it's essential to the mechanics of a visual novel and how it works. And I bring it up because it is so important. How you're delivering that text is very essential to the nature of the game. I got cool things like CGs, which I'll talk about later. Got cool things like UI, which I hate and we'll talk about later. I got things like sound and voice acting, which despite doing it, I hate and we'll talk about later. Then you have programming, which takes all these really cool assets and smooshes them together into something that you can deliver to a player and go, look at this cool thing I made. And they can go, neat. moving. And you can take all those things and you can mish them and mash them and put them into all these different really cool variations that serve whatever purpose of whatever game you're trying to make. If you far over the right, that's choices. It's a mobile game, you know, and so it has a purpose. And you know, there's different things you can do, and there's some rules, but not as many as you think there would be. It's fun. It's a lot of fun because you can just do stuff, and who's gonna stop you? No one. That's who. I'm not. Now, because visual novels are at their core a game, it's gamified narrative. There's a win condition. There's a gameplay loop. The win condition is you finish the story and you get the ending you wanted and you get to smooch whichever boy or girl or whatever you wanted, because I got dragon people in my game, so you know, whatever. Or bugs. There's bugs. It's a bug game. There's a couple of those, come to think of it. Now I'm like really like working through it. And your gameplay loop is have a plot, make a choice. That choice affects the plot, and the plot advances. And then you go again, and again, and again, and it progresses as the game goes, and it branches, and it ends, and all that kind of good stuff. But that's this basic loop. Now, obviously, you can have choices that affect the plot more than other choices, and that's a design element that you have to kind of just work with. Y'all tell me if you can't hear me, because I'm kind of away from the mic a little bit. But yeah. Cool, and I'm leading off with these because for a very important reason. You have two major parts because it is a game. You have a game engine, which is the thing you build the game in. Unreal, Unity, RenPy, Java. That's not an engine. That's a language. I take that back. I'm blanking on other engines. Frostbite, whatever. And then you have your distribution platform. Distribution platform is what you're putting it on. You're putting it on PC, you're putting it on a console and PC, you're putting it on phones, you're putting it on tablets. Are you like etching it into stones and then like you deliver them by hand to people's houses and they have to be like, oh, I want to go to this route. Page 3. Oh no, I died. Page 1 again. Like choose your adventure books. I don't know. So you have to decide how you want to do that going forward, because that's going to affect the cascading effect to every single other little thing you're going to be doing. Is what you're building it in and what you're putting it on. And I can talk about this later, but also your demographic. Who are you selling it to is huge. So what you're building it with, what you're putting it on, who you're selling it to. Those are going to be three things that are going to affect every single other aspect of your game. So you have to know them early. You also have to know, these are some engines you can use. I highly recommend RenPy for new visual novel developers because it is free, it is open source, Tom is amazing who made it, and you can go home tonight and it is so easy to learn, you can have a functioning visual novel in like 3 hours. Done. You can take a picture of it now. I also have business cards which will link to my website, and all this information is on my site. And if you forget to get a card now, come down to the VN reading room later, and you can also talk to some of the other developers, and we will like ply you with so much information your brain might explode. But yeah, you can absolutely go home tonight with no programming knowledge and have a functional game in a couple hours with a combination of tools. And you also have to take into consideration your distribution platform and your engine, because there's all these other really cool things you can do with visual novels. And if you want to do them, you gotta know what you can do them with, because some engines work better with different things, and you have to that's a very high level. I want to make a game. I want to make a RPG style, but it's a visual novel. Okay, well, are you going to make it in an RPG engine, or are you going to make it in a visual novel engine? What game are you making? That's very, very important, because different engines handle different things differently. And so that's an eternal question. Like, I have been on a lot of teams for other genres of game, not visual novels. Well, they'll start in an engine, and we'll get halfway through, and I'm like, you did not need to be using this engine. What are you doing? You could have made this in Unity 2D. Why are we doing Unreal? You guys are driving me crazy, because now I have so much extra work that I wouldn't have had if you'd picked a different engine. Why? That happens. You deal. So, questions so far. We'll take a momentary pause and questions so far. Any questions? Yes, Juan?
Which visual novels inspired you to start making your own?
Okay, that's a good question for later, but I'll answer it now. I'm going to come back to that question because I actually have to ruminate on that a little bit because I have the games I really, really enjoyed, like just for fun, but then I have the games where I was like, oh, if they can make that, I can do so much better. I have to think about that a little bit. Real quick, yeah.
In the last slide where it was the different, oh gosh, I just forgot the word, I guess like
Stuff,
stuff.
gameplay elements.
Gameplay elements. If you were going to use multiple ones of those, would you set up like a hierarchy of which one is more like your main gameplay element?
Absolutely.
That would dictate what you would build it in?
Absolutely. That is exactly how you want to approach it. Because like I said, so like, okay, say I want to make Final Fantasy VI. Yeah, that works. Okay, let's just work for the example I'm about to go. So that game, you have your combat, and you have overworld, but then you have, oh, that's actually a really bad example for this. Hold on, let me back up 2 seconds. Let's say you're making Dragon Age Origins. So that has two elements. It's got RPG combats of like fighting stuff, but then it has a level of branching narrative. So, are you making an RPG with a little bit of extra branching narrative, or are you making a game with a fast, complicated branching narrative and you get into fights a couple of times? Because it's relatively easy to affix a visual novel style framework on top of a different engine sometimes than to make an engine do something it can't do mathematically. If that was a really weird answer. Like Unity is a really good example. Unity does not, it's weird. Visual novels in Unity are very strange because the way Unity handles text is really weird. And so people have made visual novels in Unity, but you have to have a whole other framework to make it work. So yeah, you want to see what your engine can do, what's important, is the narrative important or is the gameplay important? And then figure out what engine does what best. And like, okay, do I want to have to math all the, like, so kind of going back to RPG, do you want to have to math all the RPG yourself, or do you want to get an RPG Maker to do it for you? And then figure out how to make RPG Maker look like a visual novel. Because it is absolutely doable, fairly easily. Like, Fly Me to the Moon is done in RPG Maker. So yeah, that's long answer to a short question, basically, if that helps. Figure out what actual game you want to do. What is your core mechanic? Then what can your engine do? And what is important? What do you have to cut? What do you have to maybe finagle a little bit more to make it work with the engine you're doing?
Okay, and then I guess an extension of that is since you would then pick whichever engine works best with like the main element.
Yes.
You would then sort of just for the other stuff.
Yeah.
You would just still build it within that engine, or could you build those other elements in an engine that's better for them and then just bring them in?
Engines don't tend to play together too well. Because like think of it like you want to think of a game engine as like the engine in your car. You know, like you put a Honda engine in a Chevy car. It doesn't. That's a terrible analogy. Wow. Yeah, it's like engine. Yeah, there you go. That's much better. It's like putting 18 engine. You know, exactly. A semi-truck engine in a Honda is gonna be weird. It's not gonna work. Because the engines themselves don't play together. So what you end up having to do is you end up finding out if other people have built frameworks that work within the engine you're already using. And a lot of it has to do with the fact because different engines use different programming languages. RenPy is Python, you know, RPG Maker is JavaScript. Someone have to correct me on that later. Unity is C++. And so the mixing of the programming languages, you can do it, it's just weird. It just gets weirder and weirder and weirder the more engines you try to cram together. So you just don't. Like, the engines are what you build the game in. You can't really, like, pile on top of each other. Does that answer?
Yeah.
Like basically, and what's cool about engines, you pick an engine, and you stick with that engine, and you don't update that engine while you're working on the game. Because an engine updates, and it gives you new stuff, and that doesn't work because things will break and you'll be like, okay, I fixed this. Oh God, 17 of the things are broken. And it's a problem. So that's a AAA developer kind of thing. Like if you're working with like 2.7.7 of an engine, even if the game takes 5 years and 3.0 comes out. You're still working with 2.7.7. Like you have to, you pick it and then you go. It's a thing. It's a thing. Engines are wacky. I'm gonna keep going. I'm not horribly wonderfully versed on engines. It's just one of those things where it's like it's one of my less. Like I know how they work and I know what they are and I know what which engine does what. But like, yes, Tom.
Just a pithy way to put it.
Yeah.
A car with 2 engines in it
Yes.
doesn't drive very well.
Thank you. That's a great. I'm stealing that one. Thank you. Yeah, I was trying to come up with a good analogy. I'm just like, I don't know. I'm not sure what I got. Cool. Writing. Okay, so with writing being the primary gameplay mechanic of a visual novel, it's got to be good. Okay, I say good. It's got to be functional. Good is totally subjective. But the fun part, though, is it's not that much different than writing any other piece of fiction. You're still going to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you're still going to have characters, and they're still going to talk to each other, and you're still telling a story. I think a lot of people, when they switch over from linear fiction to interactive fiction, they get a little freaked out. It's like, but there's so many branches. And I'm like, it's okay. You're okay. Calm down. Okay. Beginning, middle, and end. Start there. Beginning, middle, and end. What do you do? Because you can use these same plot structures, just at some point that plot structure is going to go blah. So instead of having one rising action, one climax, one denouement, you're going to have 7 or 5 or 12 or none. And you're like, wow, why? So it's a matter of learning how to write and learning how to write that multiple times to make it work. And we call these branches routes. So like you're playing a game, I'm going to be on the Kujiko route, or I'm going to be on the Clear route, or I'm going to go do the route where I die, whatever floats your boat. And so we have usually the main story, and then we have the routes. That's just how we talk about the branches of a visual novel. So this is a basic construction. We have a main story. You're tootling along. You're like, do, and then you meet girl A, girl B, girl C, and at some point you have to decide, am I going to go hang out with girl A, girl B, or girl C, and it's choices you make along the way. It's ways you interact with them. And there's some caveats to this, because you can have situations where you go on somebody's route or you go on a story's route, but there's 2 alternate endings to that. Like, I'm on the Kujiko route, and either we're going to have a lovely time together forever and our love is going to be confirmed, or he's going to literally eat me. 2 options, same route, depending on where the choices happen and how you want to design your game. You also have cool things where in the main route of the story it branches away. It's like, I'm going to go with this person and then come back. Or I'm going to go with this person and then come back. Really common strategy. You see it in Hakuoki Flame, the Demon of the Fleeting Blossom. If you come down to the Vian reading room, you can play Geshelfold, and that has that in there. For sure, the other ones probably do too, but I don't know. I haven't played them. My Only Sunshine has it. I just remembered. Sort of plug certain games. You also have cool things where you can just die. That's a thing you can happen. It happens in Hustle Cat. They're like, if you leave the cafe, you're going to turn to stone. And then you leave the cafe, and they're like, do you want to leave the cafe? You're like, yeah, and then you turn to stone. Steam achievement. You also have really cool things like secret routes that only open after you've done all the other routes. And you find out that the secret route was, you get to date the solemn, brooding cafe owner. He's secretly a warlock. It's very exciting. Okay, there's a bunch of games that actually follow that, because I wasn't even thinking of Dandelion. That's always a lot of fun, and that is another part of our win condition. Because, like, we talk about replayability in games. Does this game have replayability? And some games have more than others, if it's really story heavy, maybe you can only really play it once and have a lot of fun. Look at the new Fire Emblem game. Has so much more replayability than previous entries, because, man, once I finish Blue Lions, I gotta go Golden Deer because my boy Claude. But other games didn't have that as much. So that's the same thing. We talk about replayability in visual novels. implementing things like routes creates replayability, and implementing routes that are hidden creates even more replayability. It's like, oh god, now I gotta do all 6 of them, even though I hate this guy, just so I can see what the secret ending is. And you do. Because you have to. Like, you're like, oh, I hate this guy. I'm just gonna, like, flip through his route really, really fast. Okay, now I got the secret ending open. Cool, I can actually get what I wanted, and it better be good. These are from some games I've made. This is a game where the win condition wasn't really a specific route, it was you live. You get to the end of the story without having gotten yourself killed. And there's 5 different places where you could get yourself killed. And it's very dependent upon choices that 2 characters make together. So it's like, oh, if this girl did this and then you did this right after, you died, or you did this. It was a matter of kind of like playing with it and seeing how it worked. And it was a matter of cascading consequences. This is a game I was in as a voice actor where it went back in time. You got to a point, you made the wrong decision, and the game went back in time and came back through. Make a decision wrong, gotta do it again. This is a game I worked on. If any of you were at the Q&A earlier today, I talked about this game. It's called Heart Connection. I decided that instead of picking a love interest, as the game progressed, you were playing as the love interest, and there was one central person you were all going after, and your 4 mercenaries, well, you only played as 3 of them, but it's 4 mercenaries escorting a prince to a country, and they all want a piece of that prince action. And so each of the 4 characters, you hear the story through their eyes, and it's the same story told 4 different ways. But there's sections where I had to consider the physicality of their space. Where are they at each point in the story, and how do I plop them where they need to be? And those are different ways you can approach the story with interactive fiction that you don't get to do with linear fiction, because you get to play with it a little bit more, and you get to kind of be like, well, we heard the story through this guy's eyes. Now what happens if we see it through this one's eyes, and he doesn't speak the language, and so it's different. Those are fun things you get to do with interactive fiction that you don't get to do with linear fiction. Blap. So how do these branches work? You're playing the game. You get a choice. Playing the game again, you get a choice. You get a choice. As you make these choices along the way, the first one, brush his hair or kick him in the shins. Make a choice. Next choice, call out to Jezebel. Call out to Delilah. You made your choice. Help the dark wizard. Help the light wizard. You made a choice. At some point, depending on how you design the game, that choice produces results. And there's a bunch of different ways you can do this, and I'm going to make a video series about it. It's going to be amazing. But there's things like gauges and variables, and we can talk about it for hours and hours if anyone's interested in hearing about that. But it's basically you're making the choice come to fruition. Like think about if any of you guys play Dragon Age or you play Fallout. You know those little boxes that pop up? It's like everyone liked that, or so and so disapproves. Same principle of like, oh, I need to build this guy's approval, or he's not gonna go out with me. Same concept. It's just you're adding numbers. You're playing with numbers, and you're making it work. And there's a million different ways you can do it, depending on how the game is structured. But that's how the narrative works. Choices get made along the way. They are on the back end. Something is done, depending on how you want to build it, and then the choices bear fruit. I'm a word nerd. So this is actually something I talked about for a million years. I'm not going to. Questions so far about writing? Yes, at the front.
So on the subject of win conditions, do you think a visual novel could work with multiple?
Oh, they do. They always do.
They always do, right?
Oh,
how
yeah,
do you
no.
go about narrowing those down and or choosing the ones that are important?
That's a matter of what kind of story you're trying to tell. So when I play visual novels, I see how many endings there are, how many are good endings, how many are bad endings, and I go for all of them. Because what's really fun about visual novel players specifically is they love bad endings. They love losing because it's fun, because something fun happens. You think I was upset when I died in Hustle Cat? I was like, oh yeah, ending achieved. Click. done. You think I was mad when I died in this game or died in that? Shoot, I died 1,000 times. If it meant I got the reward of finishing finishing a story in a certain way. Visual novel players are like, we're masochists, right? And so it's like, say you want to, build a story and you want to do win conditions, you want to do multiple routes, and you want to do like different endings. You make the win condition yourself. Like if you want, because we talk about win condition as being, oh, you beat the game. Dying is still beating the game in a way. It's still winning that narrative branch. In a way, if you think of it that way. If you divorce the idea of winning from living or getting a good ending, it just means reaching an end that's feasible. Like I've played games where there aren't any good endings. By design, the whole idea is that you're just getting to an ending via whatever means, and you kind of make your own win condition. It's like, okay, my win condition personally as a player is to get this ending. I want this ending. I want to get to this ending. I want to see it. And making the choices to get there and not get stuck on another ending. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And did I explain that way? It makes sense? Okay. Front, Pikachu shirt.
How difficult is it to storyboard this?
Ooh.
So that you can keep track of what route goes where, and
I'm gonna show you, and at the end of this, I will absolutely show you my workflow sheets from some of my games. It really depends on how complicated a game you're making. You can get as complicated or as simple as you like. My very first game I ever made, there was 2 endings. Then there was 3 when I put out a DLC patch for it. But it was very simple. You made 3 choices along the way. 2 choices led you to 1. It was best 2 out of 3, So they can get as complicated or as simple as you like. It just really sort of depends on what you want to do. And I use flowcharts. I use diagramming software. I use draw.io. I have been here in a minute. I use draw.io, and I literally am just like drawing boxes and be like, this one connects here. If you make this choice, it goes this way. If you make this choice, it goes this way. And this is gonna branch, and it's gonna branch, and it's gonna branch, or it's gonna come back together. So yeah, I physically just do it with sticky notes. I've done it with sticky notes before. Does that answer the question, or is that kind of like, do I play or do I walk around it too much?
no, that's more or less what I was asking.
Okay.
Just like, how difficult do you generally find it to keep track of what goes where and who's doing what? And
Write it down. It's what you do. It really just depends on how complicated a game you're making. How do you want to get to the ending you want to get to? If you're doing a relatively simple, if you have 6 romances, you're gonna hook up with one of the boys and you're gonna go. Those are relatively easy because you have the main branch, then you have the choice point, the deciding, the if statement, if you will, and then it's like, oh, then you finish the rest of the story. And it's just like, oh, we were all fighting, and now only we're fighting. And then it can get more complicated, and it's just you find what works for you.
so do you start out with this is the beginning and this is the various endings, and then you just kind of fill in?
That's the way I've done it before. It's like, okay, like example, my first game. This is a very easy one. It was an elf woman who was living among humans, and she was running out of time in that when she was 30, she was expected to come back and live with the elves. Because, oh, you've had your time with the humans. Come back and do what you're supposed to do. Like a Rumspringa kind of thing. And so I was like, I want her decisions to be, she either stays with the humans and goes and lives with her Sylvan girlfriend, or she goes back and lives with the elves. That was the decision that she had to make. And so I made the story work around those 2 possible endings. Does she stay with the elves, or does she go with her girlfriend? Or in the special secret third option that opened, it's a combination of the 2 where she goes back to grad school and her girlfriend's working as an admin. I write weird games, guys. I'm sorry. I write like hybrid urban fantasy, so it's like elves with cell phones. But then sometimes they have to go places where they can't use their cell phones, and so they have to telegraph. And be like, oh, did you watch Game of Thrones? Yeah, it was great. It's whatever. Did you see the Lord of the Rings last night? They did a marathon. I love that Viggo Mortensen. It's whatever. So yeah, it just depends on how complicated a game you're making. So like some people will start from the beginning and figure it out at the end. Some people start from the end and work backwards. If you're making a mystery, sometimes you want to work the ending and work backwards.
Do you have a favorite?
Oh God, I'm a scene-to-scene writer. Which means for me, I start with my beginning. I start with the meet cutes I want. I start with the okay, I know I need to do this. I need to accomplish this narratively. Like, okay, I need him to have this scene and this scene and this scene to complete his arc, and then I write between them. So, like, my current big game, The Descents Redeemed, is pretty straightforward structurally. So it's just a matter of, like, you meet all the love interests, then you make the choice of, well, not you'll make the choice, but the choice happens where you pick who you want to go with, and then it just completes. And, you know, I was trying to think of one that's a little more structurally complicated, but on top of my head, I can't. When I do, I'll tell you. But yeah. We move on. Oh, okay, Kim, question.
Just a real quick one. What was the dotted line across the hero's journey one?
It's an old school version of the hero's journey diagram where it's like normal world, unknown, the unknown. Yeah, thank you. Where it's like above is the known, and then when you hit the line, you're in the unknown, and that's where they have like all the goofy stuff. Then you come back to the known because it's Return from Dreamland.
Okay, cool. Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, that's all that was. I don't know which diagrams. Some use them, some don't. But the one more note on writing style before I move on to the art, which is honestly my favorite. Oh my God, it's 2:30 already. Sorry, this panel is long and I love it, but it's fine. The minute you start writing interactive fiction, your writing changes forever. Because I was a short story writer and I wrote a book and it was terrible, and so you're never gonna read it. And I was like a published like short story writer and published article writer and that kind of good stuff. I did copywriting. And then I wrote a visual novel, and I've never written the same since. Because a lot of it has to do with tints, and a lot of this has to do with your the game aspect of it. Because as opposed to being like, Jill walked down the hall, it's I walked down the hall, or you walked down the hall. And it's supposed to be walked, it's you walk down the hall. She or I walk down the hall, and I see a man, raven hair, and he looks at me. And it's all very, it's meant to be very in the moment, meant to be very, you're interacting with something. And so the style tends to be that way as a way of creating presence in the narrative for the player. I wrote a game where it's third person present tense on purpose because I wanted you to be, as a player, you were a god looking down on these two people and being like, do the thing. Yay, you know, and then like at the end, and for me, it was like at the end when they defy you, because you're like, don't do it. And they're like, we're going to do it. And they do it anyway. You're like, no. And they keep going. You're like, no, stop. And they do it anyway. And you're just like, why? And that was fun. That was a fun game to write. I wish I brought that one with me. I didn't. Oh, well. You can go to my site and play it and the sequel instead. Sprites. Cool. I bet you can tell which these are Japanese games and which these are English language games from America. I'll give you 3 guesses and you only need 1. The far left ones is from Fate and then from Hakuoki. Right is Hustle Cat and Monster Prom. Sprites are our actors. They are the thing that you see and you go, yes, that's the one. That's the one for me. I better get my support up, you know. And it's also a really cool aspect of writing for VNs because I love it because I hate describing people. Like, I love writing, and I love writing dialogue, and I love writing descriptions that are poetic, and it's like, oh. But then I look at a person and go, oh, they're a brunette. What color is their skin? I don't know, caramel? No, it's weird. You know, like, it's weird. Like, you know, it's like, but what's cool about visual novels is you don't have to do any of that because the art is there. So it can be like a man appeared and a man appears. It's great. You're just like, cool, there he is. Awesome. It also just tells you a lot about the story right off the bat. You can look at each of these and you can get a feel for what the story is immediately. You know, oh, this one's semi-modern Japanese, I guess. Cool. Oh, this one, it was Edo era. He's got a sword. Oh, what's going on there? Oh, he's got white hair. That he's a kuder. You know, right? And oh, this one's modern. Oh, this one's a werewolf and a letterman. Oh, what's that game about? Monster Rum is amazing, by the way. Multiplayer visual novel, really cool. I'm also working on a team for a game called Party Tales, which is going to be a multiplayer visual novel as well. I forgot to plug that earlier, so I wanted to do it now that I was thinking about it. I'm the text editor. So, character sprites. This is Fakir. He works in IT. His favorite Pokemon is Dynamo. I don't know. What generation is that? I don't know. It's a flying electric. It's fine. If Pokemon existed in the universe that he lives in, he's wearing a Pokemon shirt, ironically. It's fine. He's illustrated. He's just an illustrated sprite. I do him in Photoshop. I use Photoshop. A lot of people use Clip Studio Paint, or they use Adobe Illustrator. If you can draw on it, you can make a sprite in it. There's not really like a special thing you need. You just do it. Just draw it. You're good. Or not draw it. We'll talk about that in just like 2 seconds. And this is my illustration process. I use a program called Design Doll. It helps me do a digital armature, which I can then use for my posing. It's just a super fast way for me to do it. However you do it, it's however you do it. There's not a wrong way to make a sprite, which we're going to discuss in a minute. But let's say I have my little sprite, I throw him on screen, and I'm like, here's my sprite, look at him. Isn't he awesome? I want to volunteer from someone who's willing to do some voice work. I know there's like 5 of y'all in here. I would like a volunteer to voice this.
I would volunteer to voice.
All 3 of you do it at the same time. Kim do it. Kim do it. No, Kim do it. Kim do it.
Cool.
All right. Dick. What are you doing here?
Perfect. Love it. Now he looks like this. How's he sound now?
What are you doing here?
It changes. Jacob, do it too. This is your first one. Oh, Jacob, do it.
Wait, hold on.
It's the same. It's the same one. It's the same one. What are you doing here?
What are you doing here?
Do it again.
What are you doing here?
Right. Inflection changes. Juan doesn't get a chance. I guess or Matt or Cece. Right. Awesome. So many voice actors in one room. Here's the thing about sprites. If you have a sprite and they're sitting there and it's like, he was seething with rage. I could see it coming off of him, the steam boiling from his ears, and I feared for my life. And the character's just like, that's weird. We love like nonverbal communication. So we replicate these in our character sprites. Because if you're looking at something and they're angry, you want them to be angry. So like, how we got some expressions. Oh, we're gonna lay them out. Oh, look at him, he's so cute. Oh, he's so blushy. That's wonderful. In my current game that he's in, these are the expressions he has. These are all his expressions. Then he has 2 outfits. And that cast has 6 love interests and 6 secondary characters. And they all have the same number of expressions and multiple outfits. And sprite art then starts getting really complicated and starts getting really vast and a lot of stuff you can do. But the thing is, there's a level of modularity to it. If I don't like doing arm movements, people like putting arm movements in their games, and I'm like, no, I'm good. I don't like it. It's fine. You could even only use a couple of expressions. I think I had 4 expressions in my first game. And you find what works for you and within your capabilities or your artist capabilities and what works for your game. There's not really a right or wrong way to do it. If it looks good, you're doing it right. You might get feedback of like, oh, I didn't feel angry enough. And you can be like, okay, that's fair. And you decide if you're going to take the advice or not. There's also ways that you sort of find the shortcuts of how the sprites can work. I design my sprites as layers. So, Fakir, he's got his body sprite, and he's got a bunch of different heads. And I take him to my Ren'Py, and I go swoosh with a layered image, and as the game progresses, I'm like, Fakir happy. Fakir sad. Fakir blush. And it works, it's great. Same thing with Chris, and Chia, and Iambi, and whatever. And you set it up, and you make it work, and you do what's right for you. I have so many Photoshop macros, where I can just be like, go. And I'm just sitting there waiting for it. And like Animal Crossing my phone. It's great. It was a fishing event. I gotta go back to that. But here's the thing though, you can branch out. These are from one of my games I put out recently. These are what the sprites look like over the course of the game. I didn't have like one sprite and they changed expressions. I just changed the sprites as the story progressed to get a more of a picture book feel. So you can kind of decide what you want to do. And like you can do character customization. There's a lot of stuff you can do with sprites, just depending on what you want for your game. You can also get real wacky with it. You can do these are all from actual games out in the real world right now. We got pre-rendered, we got photos, we We got painted over illustrations. We got cutouts from 90s sitcoms. There's a game called Doki Doki Obama where they took pictures of Democrat senators and like cut them out and like drew like little anime faces on them. It's hysterical. There's Love Love Chow, which is the same thing with Ron Perlman's character from Pacific Rim, which is really weird. There's John Cena's Sexy High School Adventure. Yeah. People do weird stuff. There's birds. Like, everyone loves Hatoful Boyfriend. When Riona's mom died, spoiler for a game that's like 15 years old, whatever, I cried.
That game still deserves spoiler warnings for what
I
it does.
cried. Oh, right. We're not talking about the bad boy love ending. Oh my god.
Okay.
Like, I cried in Hatoful Boyfriend. I was like, Riona, no. Like, as long as somebody can feel for your character, it could be a red square. And red square would be like, my life is despair and ennui. And you'd be like, oh my god, mood, red square. We stand a legend. And you'd just be like, it'd be great. Like, if you play Stanley Parable. Not Stanley Parable, Thomas is Alone. Not Stanley Parable, I mixed them up. Thomas is Alone, exactly. It's just shapes. That's fine. It's friend shape, it's cool. Backgrounds. Stuff about sprite art before I dig into backgrounds and smash through the last half of this.
Oh, no, are you asking about questions?
Yes,
Oh, I actually have a question.
go on.
Have you ever played a visual novel that literally had stick figures as characters?
That wouldn't be surprising.
It exists. I don't know that I've personally played it. I'm trying to think. I have not personally played one, but that is totally a thing. Like, that's gotta be a thing. Like, just because the world is a strange and awful place. Yes.
Doodle Date.
Doodle Date. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, well, no, I was just asking, like, something about that where you can, like, make your own sprites. How would you
Oh.
code something?
Oh my god, that is a long and complicated question. Like, oh god. Huh, I don't know. I'd have to think about it. You'd have to get an engine that allows you to do, like, you'd have to use whatever engine that they use in Scribblenauts. And then,
Oh, it's the Scribblenauts engine?
well, I mean, I don't know what engine they use.
Something that works.
Like, something that would work like Scribblenauts would work. You know, where it's like, oh, you can draw in that image. It'd be something where you'd have to draw the image, and that image would populate to a character definition of some sort. And then it would be like, oh, this character looks like this.
I mean, in
And
concept,
then,
it's not that difficult.
yeah, and conceptually it could be done. No, like seriously, conceptually it wouldn't be. It would the sticking point would be the the sticking point would be the because like you can make customizable characters already, like super easy. Like you provide the presets and you go blah, done. So it'd be the translating it from the it'd be the translating of the actual image into a viable spriteable image, which games have done it. I just don't know how. Like I just don't know. I'd have to find out what they're using. There might be homebrew. I have no clue. So it's feasible. I just don't know how to do it.
Well, I guess that question boils down to you said you use layers. Can you upload like are you using like entire Photoshop projects with things like that?
No. The way layer images work in RenPy is they're just layered PNGs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Good tech question. Yeah. I work with PNGs because PNGs create transparency. Because you do JPEGs as white backgrounds, it's gross. Which you could do JPEGs, not stopping you. But yeah, PNGs create transparency, and I just do layers of PNGs. I just export everything to PNG, go, boo, and then I take RenPy and go smoosh, and it does. It's great. Good tech question. I didn't think about that conceptually. Backgrounds. Moving on real fast. How much time we got? Ooh, okay, cool. We're good. They are your set piece. They do things like do outside versus inside, night versus day. Guess what? The top background, terrible background. I can say it because it's one of mine. Why is it a terrible background? That's an okay background. It's okay. Why is it a weird background? Because think about where someone is standing to be able to see that image.
Probably 2 stories high.
Right, or like a drone or something. It's weird. It's weird because you want to think about visual novels as like you're watching a story happen in front of you. Is a good way to do it. Now you can use like things. You can use like, you can have like establishing shots and that kind of stuff. But yeah, those are weird backgrounds. But they are your set piece. They're the thing you put in there, and you slide it in the back, and you go, "Wow, these are where my characters live." Because you have this idea of these characters and wanting them to live in a physical space. You're creating spatial awareness for your characters. so they can move off stage and be like, "Wow!" You can do that in Rinpai very easily. So ATL transform. Backgrounds are also very interesting in that they shape the nature of the story in a lot of ways because you're lazy. At your core, as a human being, you are a lazy person. You're gonna do the most efficient way to tell what your story is. This is a truism. That is a hill I will die on. We're all just lazy, and that is like the game I'm working on right now. I was like, wow, they go to a comedy club, and then she goes to like a poetry slam, and then she goes to just a regular bar. That's all gonna be the same place. Like, it's just gonna be the same place, period. Okay, why is it the same place? It's literally the same place. It's just a club owned by some dude, and he just does stuff. I'm gonna make him a character, and he's gonna be a jerk. Done. And so I did. And so then I just wrote a new character, and I made him a jerk, and I hired an actor for him, and Alan did great. It was amazing. It was Al Winter. Yeah. Anyway, and so yeah, so like backgrounds are huge, will hugely shape your story. Because like that, you'll get to a situation where you're like, wow, I don't want so many set changes. I'm gonna cut some out. I'm gonna simplify, or I'm gonna do a bajillion set pieces. It's an aspect of your story that people don't take necessarily into consideration. Of okay, where do you live? And if you think of it like a play, if you've ever been in a play, every set piece you gotta build it. How many set pieces you'll want to build, friend? Up to you. There's not a right answer. Different ways you can build backgrounds. This is from an artist, Ad Laszlo. She's got a really game she's working on right now where it's anthropomorphized condiment people.
Huh?
It's anthropomorphized condiment people, like mayo and mustard and relish and soy sauce and sriracha.
So it's like humanized.
Coon, but yes, there's a bunch of boys and they're like the spirits of condiments. It's weird and it's lovely. The condiment. And I was like, okay, cool, I'm in. But she's a strong traditional background, very detailed backgrounds, amazing. It freaks me out actually a little bit. Like I'm a little like freaked out. I'm a drafter. My degree is mechanical electronics drafting. I bring in Google SketchUp and I go whoop, and then I trace over it with Illustrator, and that's what works for me. You can do Blender. Blender's really cool. A lot of people using Blender right now, and they'll do a model, they'll render it, do some photo manipulation in Photoshop, slap it into Ren'Py, and it looks gorgeous. Again, just like sprites, there's so much you can do. Your only limitation is if it looks good and how does it work together. You can take photographs, you can do abstract, you can paint over photos, just so much stuff you can do. You play to your strengths. You figure out what you can do. If you are not an artist, but you're a photographer, you go out there and you can take photos of backgrounds and you'll be looking amazing. What's that?
So you mentioned Blender, right? How do you get, Blender is like a 3D environment, right?
Cameras. So 3D modeling programs, they have cameras. And what you do is you take a camera and you go, zoop,
Just take a picture,
picture.
and you can just move that to another software. And
Yeah. It renders a JPEG.
Okay.
Or a PNG or a TIFF or whatever you want. But yeah, no, that's all rendered. That's how animation works, is they just render it in 2D. Well, they render it as a flat camera. And so the camera moves. Yeah, it's just like, which is why 3D can be really fun, because you can get different camera angles. I'm like, oh, what works best for this? Yeah. Slamming through this last part. Oh, computer graphics are really, really cool. But your game doesn't have to have them. Half a boyfriend doesn't have any. They're great. CGs, they're called CGs from computer graphic, from old school visual novels where it was like, oh, it's fully rendered. Wow. They're part of your win condition. They're part of your reward for your player. They're what the player is looking for. So it's going to be things like smooching, or, oh, here's the cool ending, and here they're hugging, or here they're dying. The top left corner, that's the last thing you see before you die in that game. So you get that, and you're like, damn it. Great. Roll back the save. Let's do this again.
And top right is a lead up to something.
Top right is a lead up to something. Bottom right, that's actually an establishing shot. That's an establishing shot for her character. She's serving poutine to a little child. It's great. Bottom left, that's a reward for Dream Daddy. It's like, oh, I finished the mat route. I get the pin up. Yeah. So that's what the CGs are. CGs are your reward. And what's fun about the art in visual novels is there's not a rule. You can do what you want, and no one's going to stop you. If you want to go hardcore old school. We're gonna make this as anime as possible, and it's gonna be super Japanese. Do it. If you want to go, I'm gonna make it very Western. It's gonna be classic, Western style illustration. Do it. Do it. It's okay. No one cares. They'll play it, and it'll be amazing, and it'll be really cool. So you play to your strengths. Do what you want to do. Keep it cohesive, and you're good. You're golden, and no one's gonna stop you. I might. If it's bad, I might stop you. Be like, okay, you need to slow down. Fix this. No, keep going. You're good. We're gonna blast over GUI because it is super important, but I'm also running out of time. GUI is how your player interacts with the games. You have to take into consideration. For visual novels, that's text boxes. Text boxes are fun because you have a text box, a name box, you got navigation. It's great. Text boxes are fun. That's something really cool you can do. Currently, I'm working on the D. I use text boxes to tell when the character is talking to the demon that lives inside of her or other people. So if it's purple, she's talking to her demon. If it's white, she's talking to somebody else. And it is taking me it took me so long to figure out the way to do that. And I had to ask people. I was like, does this make sense? Do you understand what's happening here? And I still have people who are like, is she saying that to that guy? I'm like, no, the box is purple. She's talking to the demon. And you're always going to run into situations like that. And you do the best you can, and you hope people can figure it out, and you try to be accommodating and accessible, and you try to get your story out. But, you can't be perfect. In the game that this is from, they speak different languages. So I used the text box to indicate what language they were speaking at the time because it was integral to the story, and it was still a confusion factor for people. They're like, wait, I thought he couldn't think. And I was like, he's speaking bottom left corner. He's speaking elfin there. They're things you deal with, and you make it work, and you don't make it work, and you figure it out as you go. Or you can do cool stuff like this. This is a really popular thing that's happening right now, and I love it, and I need to find a reason to use it, where they're doing bubbles. It's cool. It's really cool, and I really like it. Oh gosh, it's 7 minutes. Questions so far, because this is also choice boxes. That's how you make choices. Cool things you can do. Bottom right corner is one of the coolest things. It's a horrible game. I don't recommend it to anybody. I mean, I say that, but just because it scarred me for life. It's actually an objectively pretty good game. It just scarred me. So I'm like, there's their choice structure very interesting. You only ever pick red or blue, ever, the entire game. And it's primal versus logical. And it gets really confusing when you don't know, because there's an all red route and an all blue route. And it gets really confusing when you're like, I don't know how many reds and how many blues I picked. Oh no. Oh god, because the walkthrough through the other routes are red, red, blue, 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 red, red. You're like, oh. And then, it's frustrating. It's a factor to take into consideration, though. If your game is frustrating, you're making choices, and the choices are frustrating, you've made a bad game. If they're frustrating in a good way, because it's I'm frustrated, but I'm having fun, then you're okay. But if you're frustrated and you're mad, you're like, my choice didn't make any sense. I wasn't allowed to do what I wanted to do. Bad game, unfortunately. So you adjust and you go from there. Okay. Meh. Okay.
Oh,
I'm skipping over slides.
so when designing a GUI, are there any universal rules that you should keep in mind so that when a player is using it, they understand and you can communicate to them clearly what you're doing?
It's always really tricky. It's a tricky answer because you definitely want to make sure that that they can see everything they need to do. They need to be able to get to everything easily, for one. They need to be able to read and figure out. If they're using a symbology system, they need to understand what the symbols mean. I've played games where I'll see a symbol and be like, I don't know what this button does. I'll be like, click. Oh, it's a skip button. What? So you want to take into consideration: is this clear? Is it concise? Does it do what is anticipated? Those are the three big things. If I had to pick three huge things, is it clear, concise, and clear, concise, and works as intended. I was trying to think of a different C, and I couldn't think of one. And you know what? I'm going to recommend this to you. And anybody else, he's going to be so mad I'm about to do this. If you come to VIA Novel Reading Room and you want to learn some things about GUI, my husband is a GUI programmer, GUI scripter, UI scripter. And you ask him that question. He's the guy with the beard and the long hair. And he might look up from Fire Emblem long enough to answer. So if you want like some really good UI questions, he can answer them, and he's gonna be so mad that I volunteered him, but he can deal for now. We're a video game household. We don't have kids, we have swords and consoles. So I skipped over these real fast. Music and sound effects. There's a couple of soft skills when it comes to visual novels that are very hard to teach, and that's music and sound effects and voice acting. And the reason I say they're very hard to teach is because they come from they're cross-disciplinary. Music and sound effects. I came from audio dramas. I knew how those worked. So when I came into visual novels, I was just like, this is just like an audio drama. Bloop, bloop. I have played games, however, where they have massively screwed those up. And I've been like, oh, God. So when in doubt, ask somebody else if you don't know how those skills work, and this is for anything. If there's a skill that you don't know how to do and you want to learn and you're struggling, ask somebody. Get help. You don't have to do this by yourself. But those three skills in particular, I think, are very peculiar in their effect on visual novels and like how they kind of coexist. Bad music is going to be more. You're going to be more aware of bad music than no music, and you're going to be more aware of bad sound effects and bad voice acting than of no voice acting and no sound effects. So when in doubt, you can just be kind of like, you know what? I don't really know how sound effects work. I'm not going to put sound effects in my game, and no one's going to notice. I want to have voice acting in my game, but I have no idea how voice acting works. Learn how voice acting works, and then consider putting it in your game. And I say this as a voice actor and someone who does voice casting and voice direction. And the reason, and I'm going to specify voice acting specifically right now. I am going to pause for just a half a second, talk about voice acting, because I run into it a lot in indie dev community things. They're like, I want to put voice acting in my game. I'm like, cool, have you ever made a game before? No, don't put voice acting in your game then, yet. If it's the first, this is just my recommendation, make your game, see how well it does, then get the funding via Kickstarter or Indiegogo, and then you can throw voice acting in, or hire somebody to do it for you. AAA studios don't even do their voice acting on site the vast majority of the time. They contract it out to somebody else, who then calls me up and says, come in and do some screaming into a mic for a couple hours. And I go, cool. That's how that works. And the reason I always want to point voice acting out is because people don't realize how complicated it is, but it's always the one thing people want to add. Because voice acting files are an individual file for every single voice line, and it's complicated. And we're going to go ahead and finish up with any additional questions. Here are the outline I was telling you about. Questions while we finish up. Go.
You never finished my question. What's the visual novel that inspired?
Favorite visual novel, Dramatical Murder. Just putting it out there. I'm not ashamed. I love that game. The game I played where I was like, wow, I could make this, was those old Newground Flash hentai games.
Oh my god.
Because I was like 12, 11, and being like, I like dating sims. Wow.
Oh my.
This wasn't quite what I expected, but I'll play it anyway. And as an adult, I came back and was like, dang, they were making some weird, I could do better than that, and it would be good. Psh, psh. That's kind of the answer to the question. Any more questions? Yes, go.
When on a team, but especially when you're building a project solo,
Mhm.
what's your typical QA/testing process?
Like a QA kind of thing?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's so difficult. So I always do my own round first. I get somebody else. I call in people, beta testers, beta readers, because that's you can't do that by yourself. Because you're gonna do it and you're gonna be like, you're gonna miss something. Exactly, because you're already familiar with it. You're gonna miss something. You're on your own machine. Give it to somebody else, run it on their machine. Get somebody with Linux and Mac. I've made that mistake multiple times because I don't have a Linux machine right now, and it's bit me in the butt. And I always run into issues because Windows won't do things that Linux will do, and it'll kick errors that Windows doesn't. Get somebody else to run beta for you and have them give you feedback. And don't tell them anything about the game. Just be like, hey, can you QA, can you just beta read this game for me or QA this game for me? And they'll be like, what? Just do it. And they'll be like, I don't understand what's happening here. And you'll be like, how do you not understand? But then you'll be like, okay, fair. You don't give somebody with fresh eyes a chance to do it. I beta read for people all the time.
Okay, so when you QA something like that, right? Okay, so visual novel, right? It's not like a big AAA project where you have all of these things that have to come into factor, like animation and stuff.
Mhm.
But when a visual novel is kind of just text and images, so what kind of goes into when you QA it? Like, what do you consider?
Oh,
Kind of
yeah.
system.
I mean, just because it's not as complex as a AAA game, there's still a lot of stuff there. You gotta make sure your sprites show. You gotta make sure your sprite expressions show when they need to show. You need to make sure your music cues go off. You need to make sure that your jumps are correct or your calls are correct when you're jumping to different parts of the script. You know, so like you might be playing a game. Tom is after me. This is Tom. He made Renpai. You should stay for this panel because he's gonna talk about it. I'm gonna go back downstairs though because room's gonna be
You're
all.
gonna keep answering questions.
I'm
while
gonna
you set
keep
up?
answering questions